Many of you will know the bombastic 80s rock anthem that is The Final Countdown. But how well do you know the band Europe? Not long ago I saw them live in concert. The band themselves are currently going on their own Eras tour, the Time Capsule, which over 2 sets is a celebration of their 40 years of them being a band together. Indeed, watching the concert, I couldn't help but be reminded how underrated I feel this band are. And so, over the next few minutes, I want to take 5 songs outside of the Final Countdown and the Final Countdown album that hopefully will prove to you that this is a band worth listening to. I'm going to start by taking you to the Seven Doors Hotel. This is a track off their first self-titled album, which came out in 1983. After a short piano section, the song quickly gets into a mammoth guitar riff that I think owes a lot to the heavy metal scene at the time, and I dare say wouldn't sound out of place on an Iron Maiden record. Indeed, it might surprise you to know that Europe actually started as a hard rock band, and this song is a great example of that. Not only that, but the chorus on this song demonstrates that right from the off, Jerry Tempest had a great ear for melody and creating those big sing-along choruses. It's the way that we make things right. It's the way that we hold on tight. I know it's the sign of the time. The band would quickly follow up their self-titled debut with Wings of Tomorrow in 1984, and then of course there came the mammoth, the huge, the bombastic, The Final Countdown. Indeed, there are still hard rock influences on The Final Countdown, but this album was the one that broke them big. And certainly on the 1988 effort, Out of This World, you can hear more of an 80s pop rock sheen. However, this album would also would mark a big change for the band, with original guitarist John Norum deciding to leave the band. He just wanted to play guitar and wasn't that fussed about all the promo and publicity that comes with the newfound success that Europe had. Still though, I want to highlight Sign of the Times. Yes, it is a great example of this big 80s rock sound that Europe had post the success of The Final Countdown, but it's still a great song in its own right. It has a huge riff and of course a huge chorus. And although new guitarist Key Marcello might not have quite the creativity of John Norum, still he is very much a lightning hot 80s shredder and does some very lovely guitar playing on this song. Of course, these 80s hair metal bands had a tough time going into the 90s. Bands like Nirvana and Pearl Jam very quickly made the whole scene seem very old-fashioned, and as such, Prisoners of Paradise didn't fare too well when it came out in 1991, and by the end of the world tour in 92, the band decided to call it quits and go their separate ways. But that wouldn't be the end of the story. You see, a few years later we had the turn of the millennium, and of course what better way to celebrate that than with the song, the iconic song, and what other way would you want to count down the new year? I can only imagine what it must have been like to be in Stockholm, Sweden, watching Europe, the classic lineup together to play this huge hit at midnight, the year 2000. A few years later, they come back with Start From The Dark. Clearly, the band still had chemistry and they wanted to make music together. Although it take them a little while to really get back into the groove, and although I like the title track of this 2004 effort, the band are very much trying to modernise their sound and go for a heavier vibe, and I'm not sure it's the perfect fit for this band. In 2009 though, that would change. Last Look at Eden is one of my favourite Europe songs. This is a huge song, and its mightiness in the riff is perhaps not so much just the guitars, but there are symphonic elements in there as well. I think mostly down to synths, but there's definitely other things going on that really thicken up the sound. Indeed, cheeky plug to my own song now, but I had influence to do this on my song Never Gonna Lose It, as in the middle of the riff you get this cool sound that the guitar makes. Essentially all you need to do is put your hand somewhere around the middle of the neck and then just not pressing the strings down, but then hitting the strings with your pick as hard as you can. It makes this real cool sound that personally I go crazy for, and indeed did use in that song, Never Gonna Lose It. The album Last Look at Eden isn't quite as symphonic or bombastic as that title track, but this was a point where Europe really managed to marry the harder edge sound that they wanted going into the new millennium and playing tribute to their classic rock roots. It was a really good middle ground and was a great sound for Europe to pursue into their next few albums. Indeed, I would argue that since Last Look at Eden, the band have been on the top of their game, pretty much putting out banger after banger.
Boy, you're not supposed to sing the blues where you come from.
Speaking of bangers, Not Supposed to Sing the Blues I think is a great song off their Bag of Bones album. I said about marrying modern rock sensibilities with classic rock riffs, and the riff to this song is definitely something out of the classic rock playbook, and yet the production brings it very much into the modern day. With the lyrics, the band and Joey Tempest are acknowledging their roots, which is something that I really like to hear, especially to hear the band do at this stage in their career. And I wondered to myself, is there a sense of humour behind the song? Maybe a wry smile and a joke? You see, Europe are a Swedish band, and I don't associate Sweden with blues music. And yet, the kind of rock bands that Europe are influenced by, the likes of Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and even a band like Free, do take some influences from blues rock music. And so perhaps they are making a wry smile like, oh, a band like us are not supposed to be playing blues inspired music. The last song I want to turn your attention to today is the final song off of their most recent album effort, 2017's Walk the Earth. The title track is a banger, but I'm picking Turn to Dust because it helps add a little bit of variety to what I'm giving you today. Plus, I feel actually displays Europe's sense of humour. Indeed, there is some of that beneath the sincerity that they usually come across with. This song was recorded at Abbey Road Studios, and indeed, although of course it is a big bombastic song that utilises a lot of Europe's traditional influences, I also can't help but hear a little bit of the Beatles in there, and specifically from their song I Want You, She's So Heavy. Both that song and Turn to Dust kind of do a guitar arpeggio. This is where instead of playing all the notes of the chord together, you play them one at a time, and turns it into a kind of riff that in both cases sounds really cool. This song is longer than your typical Europe song, and I can understand that around the 4.5 minute mark you might feel like you've heard everything that this song has to offer, but I would say stick with it. And indeed, it's not only does this song, I feel, really build and create a really cool soundscape as it goes on, but when you get to the end of the song, I feel like that displays the band's wry sense of humour, and stick around to the very end. Like how Marvel films have their post-credit scenes, there's a little bit at the end of this song that you may or may not appreciate. Personally, I think it's great. And as I said, just adds a layer to Europe's traditional sound. Guys, thank you for watching, and I really hope that the songs I've outlined in this video make you want to give Europe a bit more of an in-depth listen and check out what they're all about. I personally think this band are really great and really underrated. And of course you don't have to feel the same as me, but if I'm able to convert one or two of you, then my job here is done, and I'm sure the band will appreciate it too. If you like kind of classic rock or just sort of hard rock inspired music in general, you might like some of my music. I name dropped Never Gonna Lose It, but I also have a song called Nothing to Hide, which has some of that classic rock influence inside it. Regardless, I hope that you remain well and safe and sound, and indeed to see you in a future video. Take care.